Hi, my name's Sanah. I'm a trainee clinical psychologist in my second year at Salomons University. I think for me it's quite a complex answer to give you. I think that my own lived experiences through my adolescent years with my own mental health difficulties, having been part of the system, kind of attending CAMS and getting an early sense of what services look like, and also trying to seek help from psychologists who were predominantly white, middle class, who are very different from me. I think a combination of those sort of personal experiences and mental health being such a salient part of my life, as well as getting an understanding of like the flaws in the professional system at quite an early age, those things combined probably contributed to why I wanted to go down that field. And I think as I kind of progressed through my career, it was also developing a better understanding of myself. And I think on some level, through seeking kind of wider understanding of people, you do get there is better sense making of your own trauma and your own experiences. And I think being able to utilize that to better understand others. I think seeing more and more kind of whiteness within the field of mental health and clinical psychology, and becoming more actively aware of issues regarding race and my own identity, also made me want to be a part of and make change within a system that's very white and institutionally racist. So I think it's a combination of a lot of different factors as to why I wanted to do it. I think just getting yourself out there, really, like seeing what's going on out there. I think like living in London now, like things that are on like Eventbrite, events that are mental health related, are great opportunities to network and to meet people that are in the field and to speak to people and show what you're passionate about, and just meeting other people that are aspiring psychologists, both on your level and people that are on the other side and have got there, is really important, just to get a sense of the real diversity of different routes. I think not pigeonholing yourself and being kind of flexible and willing to try different services, to a certain extent being adaptable to do things for unpaid. I think that's just the reality of the current system and current climate. I know that I had to do that personally, but I would put that as very much last resort. Like, be applying to all different kinds of roles. Like I did a teaching assistant role, and just thinking really about how different roles that aren't just assistant psychologist posts can give you exactly the experience that's needed. So I guess having an open mind. Like I worked as a nursing assistant in child and adolescent mental health ward, and for me that was the most rich of experience in terms of on the floor, direct therapeutic work, understanding risk, working with completely different presentations. Up until this day, even as a trainee, by far the most rich experience I've had. So don't kind of fall into the traps of thinking that assistant psychologists are the best jobs to get, because they're just not. And they can actually be, I found anyway, less rich of that kind of real direct therapeutic human contact. Because just there's maybe more emphasis on research. You might be doing kind of work in the community that's just a bit more protected. And I think being out on the floor in an inpatient ward, for example, is, there's a lot more that you can get from that. Depends on what you want from it, though, obviously. So another thing is joining any kind of relative groups that are in the community. So through like Facebook, I personally attended, I think it was at the time called North Thames Aspiring Psychologist Groups, but I think there are different ones that are out there at the moment, under King's, and just that do regular kind of groups, meetings and link ups to other universities that just really give you a better sense of what you need to do in terms of applications, and you get a better sense of where other people are at and how, diversity of experience really. So join one of those. I think in terms of do's and don'ts for the DClin application, for me, I remember, especially when you first start out, there's a real sort of uncertainty. So there's a pull to kind of look at other applications or ask people around you, which I think can be useful. I think it's a useful starting point. But I would try to avoid getting into the pull towards like mimicking or feeling like you need to replicate something because you've seen that they've got on with that. I think it's a good idea to look at a few and to speak to people to get a sense of, to a certain extent, what boxes you need to tick in terms of, showing that you've got reflective capacity, or that you're thinking about issues like risk, all of those things through your work. But there's a way of doing that isn't mechanical. And I think that there's something about really reflecting on yourself. And I know that this is kind of spewed at you. Everybody's always like, reflect. But I think, having your own therapy and really getting to the root of why you really want to do it, and what parts of the work that you found challenging and really why. And if you can really, for yourself, think about that in terms of your early life experiences. And, it's not about putting anything that's going to make you vulnerable on that form. I think whatever feels safe to you. But I think getting a real sense of yourself in that form, whilst also threading through gently the things that you need to tick off. So, I think it's a difficult balance to get for sure. But try to keep as much of yourself in there as you can. But I know that was hard. That's a hard thing to do because I definitely struggled with that. And not getting too many people to look at it because everyone's edits will just wash it away. So kind of, a few trusted people is helpful to kind of to draft it through and to kind of get those drafts going. I think as well, early days, like you think you need to read excessively to get in some kind of, I don't know, references to literature, and like absolutely not, like that's not necessary. I think that, just it's really about how you relate to your experiences and what you can take from it. So I think that's it, really. Try and get to sell that as much as you can. Speak about what's important to you, yourself, like your identity. That's it really. I think having a clear sense before you go in of what you feel comfortable to talk about and what you don't. So what you feel comfortable to share and what you don't. Because I think some universities definitely encourage reflection on your early life experiences and how they link in with your desire to do this profession. And having a clear sense of those boundaries for yourself before you go in, I think, is important, because I think it can be a really highly emotive process, and you can feel yourself being pulled. So definitely having a clear sense of that. Again, I think, which is similar to what I was talking about in terms of the application, is really reflecting on why you want to do it, and how that links to things that you wouldn't, things like your parenting styles, things like how you relate to groups, and how that might link to how you related to groups through your culture or through your family, and all of those things. Like, they seem like there's a lot of depth to that, and maybe seem like quite tangential things, but I think that they're important, even if they don't come up in the interview, to really get to grips with, because I think if they can see that you're very reflective, I think that's what a lot of the definitely asylums, I think, what they're looking for. I think there's a tendency to kind of really kind of over prep with models. I think pick the ones that you like, that speak to your heart. Like, I think a lot of people think they need to like become CBT experts. personally, I enjoyed compassion focused therapy. I just went down that route and used that to speak about that in my interview. And it's about being able to, I think, just be flexible in your thinking. Like when they give you vignettes, like, can you think on your feet, like, about those situations? You know, if you're going into mechanically with like these prescriptive models that you think that you've learned back to front, like it will only actually restrict you. I think it's about being able to think holistically, being able to think broadly about societal, cultural, family factors, you know, and being able to apply that sort of thinking to every situation, and showing that to them, really, that yes, you can make reference to certain models, but that you're a critical thinker and you can think kind of more broadly about any situation. Showing that you can think about things that, you know, like faith, culture, all of those things that aren't necessarily screaming at you off the page, but that you can think a little bit, dig a little bit deeper. I think those things are important. And that when you do pick those things up, you know, in the vignette or in the role play and all of those things, having an awareness of yourself in it and being able to reflect on that. I think that you know, how you relate to those certain things, I think that's an important thing to be able to show that you can do. I think the role play stuff, it can feel really artificial and it's really difficult. But I think, you know, for me, I remember actually saying that, kind of speaking to that in the interview and just saying that I found that quite uncomfortable and I've never done anything. Just being really honest, you know, you're a human being in a really weird artificial process. Like it is weird. I think they're aware of that. So try not to be too rigid. Try and be yourself as much as you can. I think going in there being so anxious that you pretend to be someone else and you don't get it is significantly worse than going in being yourself and then not getting it. Because do you know what I mean? It's yeah. I think knowing that you tried to show them the best of yourself is all you can do, really. And yeah, get a sense of who you are outside of this. Talk to them about what your hobbies are. Talk to them about what your passions are. Let them see that you're not just like every other applicant. You know, think about what makes you different, what makes you stand out. So for me, there were quite a few, really. I think there's the obvious ones that I think that a lot of people experience, which are actually getting the post that I thought that I needed to get there. So the assistant psychologist post, it took me a while to get my first assistant post. I think I really struggled in terms of whether my academics were enough. You know, I got sort of like mid-range 2-1, just mid-range 2-1, and I felt like that was really holding me back in terms of kind of like the point systems that were developing in certain unis. So I ended up quite late on in my journey, sort of 4 years in, doing a master's, which I then kind of did well in and was able to kind of get on. But I wasn't actually sure, because the year that I was doing my master's, so it was before I got my results, was when I got on. So I think there's a bit of a fallacy in terms of that you need that, you know. I think though what happened for me was doing the master's helped me in terms of the research test. So yeah, I guess that there are obstacles, but it's not a clear-cut path as to what you have to do. So I wouldn't say that you have to do a master's to get on, but in some ways it did help me. I think for me, you know, one of the key obstacles, which I think is an ongoing one that I'm still facing whilst actually on training, is, you know, being a woman of colour. I think negotiating parts of my identity. I think that's personally and professionally, but working out where and how I can be myself in certain spaces and certain roles, and bring myself to the role. So, you know, my queerness, my being Pakistani, you know, even my faith, being Muslim, all of those things, I think, in a system and a journey which kind of there's a lot, it's shaped by whiteness. I think also there's a lot of rigidity as to, you need to do this to get to somewhere. There's a temptation to kind of whitewash yourself or kind of suppress those parts of yourself to get to where you need to. And I think now, on reflection, I think it's so important to embrace those parts of yourself, and kind of get in touch with how they help you to be a better psychologist, and how they help you better understand people. And I think, selling all of the amazing things that you have about yourself rather than trying to like shove them under the carpet. I think for me, especially managing and negotiating my own mental health within a system that, on a kind of superficial level advocate for mental health and is very much about mental health, but the reality of it is that no one's actually speaking about their lived experiences. And when you're trying to get through and just be accepted and just pass, and just kind of get the next job and eventually get there, there's a big fear as to whether that will be an obstacle. And I've really got to a place now where I can speak very openly and freely about that. I think I struggled to do that actually when as an assistant and as a nursing assistant. But I think that's both, I think that's entangled with personal and professional obstacles, both of those things. But I would, advise people to be open about their experiences as much as you possibly can. I'm very open about that now. But I understand the challenges that come with the kind of fear of that being an obstacle to getting where you need to be. But I think it's brave, and I think the courage in being able to speak to those things only speaks to you being a better and more courageous psychologist. Yeah, it's been rich with growth. I think it's definitely emotionally challenging. I think when you're immersed in kind of psychological understanding and learning about issues like trauma, attachment, all of those things, and working with people that have been through an extensive amount of trauma, and working out how you relate to those things, and especially with your own lived experiences, I think finally getting there after such an uphill climb, and you kind of have expectations of working towards something for so many years, and then realizing that it's still incredibly flawed, the system is incredibly flawed, and getting a better sense of the limitations of your role. So yeah, I guess managing expectations with reality is a really challenging process. And I think working out how, when you're finally at the place where you have wanted to be, and actually there's still limitations of what you can do for the people that you work with, because there is so many sort of deeply entrenched issues in terms of kind of institutional racism, and how power plays out in these systems. It's definitely difficult. At the same time, I think it's rich with learning. I think that you build really significant relationships with peers that are going through the same thing as you. I think in terms of, for me, one of the dominant factors that I've found a challenge in terms of training is definitely negotiating whiteness in clinical psychology. I think I'm on a course which is very, there's a real lack of diversity in terms of the representation in terms of teaching, and even kind of, I guess, even as trainees, there's like 3 of us in our cohort, and so there's a real whiteness in the sense of, I'm not just talking about that kind of in the sense of race by what we understand in terms of racialization, but I'm talking about this in terms of power structures and the models that we're taught. And for me, particularly because I'm studying that area, it's become much more salient to me. And it's hard to negotiate that and to bring myself as much as I can and not have to assimilate to be able to kind of get through. I think that there's this overarching kind of weight of I need to pass, and negotiating what I'm passionate about and holding true to my value system, and wanting to advocate for the people that I work with, and kind of in relationships where there's power imbalances, so in supervised relationships and all of those things, you know, you're constantly treading that maybe activist hat of what is important, and self-preservation at the same time. So I think that's been a key experience of training, negotiating when to speak up and when not to, so that I can also, you know, maintain my energy to be able to get through the 3 years. Yeah, I think for me that I'm not sure if that's, you know, the case for everybody, but I think I've definitely felt that because of maybe some of the activist work that I do outside of here. Yeah, it's, you know, the different settings are worlds apart. You can go into one service and, you know, for me, I'm in a CAM service. I love it. I absolutely love it. I really, really, really enjoy it. And I feel really passionate about what I'm doing. Literally a couple of weeks ago, months ago, I was in a learning disability services and I found it really hard to connect. I had a kind of really challenging supervised relationship. You know, the work was really different and I felt quite disheartened, and it made me question kind of what I was doing and whether it was suitable for me. So it can be quite up and down. But I think through the process, you get a better sense of who you are, where you want to work, the models that fit with you, the models that don't. But you're just sort of building up this collective sort of diverse toolbox, I guess, and working out what fits with you. I think hugely. I think it's probably been the most sort of dominating. I felt like it's really always there. I mean, with life obviously also, but I think particularly in training, because you're always in a room full of white people, and you're always so aware of your differences. It kind of screams through the room. I think for me, what I found particularly difficult is I'm particularly passionate about those issues around kind of race and culture. So in teaching, I always want to bring kind of my reflections on those issues, and I've struggled with not wanting to kind of always be that brown girl putting up her hand, always talking about race and culture, you know, where to a point in which it makes other people switch off. You know, I want to keep people engaged, and I've struggled with that because no one else is doing it, and it's hard to negotiate what you feel is responsibility between you and the other kind of black and brown people in your class, and you know your white peers who you know, and don't get me wrong, I think that my cohort, you know, I'm quite blessed in the sense that there are a couple of people who do that, but you know, there is you that is something I've been negotiating kind of internally for me. Something that I'm learning, and I think is really important to speak to in supervisory relationships, managerial relationships. Bring that difference yourself, because people won't do it, you know, and I think that takes a lot of bravery and confidence, but I'm learning that it's important, and I think that it can be done in a thoughtful way, but it comes with challenges, and there are some people that don't want to have those conversations, and it brings up a lot of discomfort for people who haven't had to reflect on their privilege or on the differences between you and them, but that doesn't mean that it isn't the time to do so, and there are ways that can be done thoughtfully, but I have found it hard, and it's something that I'm still negotiating, and at times it has, I felt that speaking to some of those issues or speaking to my difference has brought challenges where at times I thought, like, is this actually compromising my, you know, you know, how they're assessing me and my competencies, and that is really, really difficult, but again, this links back to negotiating your value system, and the whole self-preservation versus, you know, activist kind of speaking to what is important both for yourself and for the people that you work with. And I think it's a constant dance, because at the end of the day you do also need to get to the other side to be able to make the most change, so yeah, I think it's learning, reflecting on those things with people that have shared experiences with you, peers on the course. Seek support outside of the course that you're on, other Black and brown people in different universities that have, similar and different experiences, and just talk to each other and build a network, build a community. That's it, really. I think embrace who you are. I think I had a lot of conflict in terms of my identity. And I think that, that intersects to kind of my mental health experiences, my sexuality, my faith, and resisting a lot of parts of myself actually led to a lot of torment and conflict, and actually took a longer, it was a process that I value now in reflection. But I think if I could have got there earlier and was able to meet all parts of myself with love, I would advise my 16-year-old self to do that. I think, stick to what you're passionate about. I think at 16, I knew that I wanted to do psychology because of my experiences in the system and being in mental health services. And for me, it's been a dream from quite a, early adolescent years. And I'm blessed enough to say that I've got there now. So, don't give up. There's lots of hurdles that come your way in life, and also professionally and people and all of those things. But I think if you're really passionate about something and, it really speaks to your heart, you'll get there. So don't give up and stay away from bad choices that deter you from where you really want to be. Speak to people, try and have good people around you as much as you can. Seek help when you need to. Don't isolate yourself. Enjoy the journey. I think there is this desperate urgency to get to the goal, which is being a psychologist, getting onto training. And everybody used to say this to me, and I'd just be like, go away. I need to get there, because you have the constant fear that you never will. And I completely understand that. But it's never what you think it's going to be anyway, and there are so many different paths to working in mental health and working with people. And the title of doctor or clinical psychologist is overrated. I think that you can earn the same amount of money, if not more, doing alternative therapies. It's not the only way. And I think there is so much in getting to know yourself through the process of this. Get to know yourself. If that means trying different things, if that means taking a bit longer, there's so many diverse people on my training that are in their 30s and their 40s that have had completely different life experiences, had a career in music and then come to this, there's no rush, get to know yourself. I think getting too focused on this tunnel of this is the only way and this is the only thing that I can do is limiting to your growth. If you're a creative person, try creative things, use the time where you have more freedom and flexibility as to kind of getting onto training, to try other things, to think about mental health in creative ways, through, poetry, writing, music, all of the things, and really kind of get a sense of why you want to do this and the different ways of working with mental health that aren't kind of through a tick box of trying to get onto clinical, and also that you're enough. I think that this journey makes you feel like you're not good enough. You are, you're enough as you are, and it's just getting to know that, and just be kind to yourself.